So what software will we need? It can get kind of confusing when people go to download Java their first time because there's lots of different options when you get up there. We are going to need something called the Java Development Kit, the JDK. The JDK contains the software that you need in order to create a program so that other people can run it on their computers. Okay. A lot of people, especially new programmers and people who don't know any better, confuse that with the JRE. And the JRE is included with the JDK. The JRE is the Java Runtime Environment. That's just the piece of Java that you need on your computer in order to run a program somebody has created. Okay. So the JDK is for programmers to use to make the software. The JRE is the piece that lets us run those programs. We also need a compiler and some other tools that are all built into the JDK. So we're going to need the JDK first. The Java Runtime Environment, again, I said, contains the software needed to run a completed Java program. The Java Runtime Environment installs on your computer something called the Java Virtual Machine. And the Java Virtual Machine is very important because there's a Java Virtual Machine written for just about every popular operating system out there. So since all those operating systems can have Java Virtual Machines on them, that means they can all run Java. All those things are included with the JDK. If your friend wants to run a program you wrote, they'll need the JRE installed on their computer, but they don't necessarily need the entire Java Development Kit, the JDK. The other thing you need to know is that Java comes in some different flavors. They're all still Java, but they all have different kind of support systems to go with them. Specialized features. So Java SE is Java Standard Edition. That's the edition that we use primarily on desktop computers. It's also used on some servers sometimes in other places, but generally it's primarily used for desktop computers. We're going to be using SE for this course. So when we go to look for our Java program, we're going to get Java SE, the Standard Edition. There is also Java EE, which is the Enterprise Edition. It's still Java, but it's primarily used on servers, and it has a whole lot of support packages and other software that helps out with the kind of things that servers do. We're not going to be doing server programming, so we don't need Java EE. There's also Java ME, which is the Micro Edition, also still Java, but it's a more stripped down version of Java that's designed to run faster on smaller devices, which is why it's used on mobile phones and things like that. So in addition to the Java Development Kit, which is the base, that's actually the Java language, we probably want some tools to make programming Java easier. Technically, we could install the JDK and run a lot of commands from the command prompts on our computer, from the console windows. But most programmers don't do that anymore. We use something called an Integrated Development Environment, or an IDE. Okay. An IDE provides access and packages several tools together. We don't have to use an IDE, but it does make our life easier. Again, we could just use console windows. We could use Notepad in a console window and write a program, compile it with some commands. But it's nicer to be able to click a button sometimes. So what does an IDE include? It can include a text editor. Didn't mean to do that. Include a text editor, nicer than like running Notepad off of your PC. It usually has some kind of syntax checking. It checks our words. It's kind of like a spell check, except for programmers. It makes sure that we're writing what we mean to write and catching our errors before we make them. It contains a compiler to compile our programs so that they will run. We'll talk more about that in a future video, what a compiler is and how it works. They also contain, an IDE will also contain a debugger to help with troubleshooting programs. And it will also have file management tools, like maybe being able to look at our project in the folders and all the supporting files that it contains. Lots of different things, but those are the big ones: the text editor, the compiler, the debugger, and the file management tools. We could install all those tools individually and have all those separate windows open and have to manage those windows or type commands to do those things. It's nice to have the integrated development environment so that all the tools are right there at our fingertips while we're programming. The IDE that we're going to use, we're actually going to use two of them in this course. We're going to use NetBeans, which is a professional IDE for, you can create all kinds of Java programs. We're going to do a lot of console programs. We're also going to use an IDE in an API. We'll talk about APIs later, called Greenfoot. Okay, so Greenfoot has its own IDE that's great for learning to program in its environment, which is a game programming environment. It's a fun way to make learning Java successful.